In my seemingly never-ending search to try to find a place in this world where I felt like I fit in and felt like I belonged, I made a series of terrible mistakes. I spent an entire decade of my life going straight down. And when I look back on that period of time, I realized that nearly every single mistake I made during that period was based on one faulty assumption. This one little mistake in my brain almost permanently ruined my life. And I strongly suspect that I am not the only person who has ever made this mistake. In fact, I suspect there are probably many of you who are actively making this mistake right now. So today, I'm going to share with you how misusing the transitive property in my own life almost ruined it permanently. First, a little backstory. And I know you might be thinking, what the heck is the transitive property? I will get to that. But I got to tell you the story first. So I'll keep this brief. Up to like middle school, I had a pretty stable group of friends. I had a pretty solid peer group, and it was a good situation. I was pretty happy with it. But around fifth grade, a few of my friends moved away. I changed schools a couple times, basically within the span of like 2 years, lost all my friends, didn't know anybody, had to start over from scratch. So eighth grade, start a new school, don't know anybody, don't have any friends, don't have a peer group. And so the very first thing I'm trying to figure out is like, who are my friends? Who am I going to hang out with? And I find this group of guys who remind me a lot of the old friends that I used to have. They seem like they're very similar people. So I thought, okay, those are my people. I'm going to try to get to know them, get to hang out with them. They seem like my kind of people. And as you guys probably remember from middle school, that's unfortunately kind of not how middle school works. If people don't already know you and they already kind of have this established friend group, they're often not real receptive to like letting in a new guy. So that didn't work out. They were not interested in making me a part of their friend group. And my interpretation of that experience was I must have set my sights a little too high. Like, I'm the new guy. These guys are kind of like popular, smart athlete type people. Maybe that's not where I belong. So let me aim a little lower and try again. So I tried to make friends with another group of guys who were like kind of on the periphery of this core group that I was trying to be friends with, like people who were sort of on the outside looking in a little bit. And yeah, they weren't real interested in me either. They kind of rejected me just as thoroughly as that main peer group. And you can kind of just rinse and repeat that general cycle for like the next 3 years of my life, where basically I just kept going down and down and down, trying to find the people who I was good enough for, basically, trying to find where I fit in, trying to find who would accept me. And I was also very much, because of this kind of ongoing pattern of rejection, sort of doing the chameleon thing where it's like you somewhat intentionally develop hobbies and interests and characteristics and personality traits of this group of people you're trying to essentially like integrate yourself with. And so by the time I get to sort of like the bottom level socially of like high school, my personality, I've thoroughly like rejected and attempted to overwrite my actual personality at this point because no one has liked it. And what I learned from that was the world is never going to accept me as I am. And so I need to like be whoever they want me to be. But I couldn't pick, I kept changing who I was trying to be. So by this point in my life, age 15, 16, my personality is basically this Frankenstein's monster-like construct of completely like incongruent traits that I've grafted onto myself from various peer groups that I was unsuccessful in integrating with. So I am just a mess at this point. And there's this really specific day that stands out to me as like the low point. And I was at this, I guess you would say a party, although it wasn't, it's a very specific kind of party. And if your vision, when I say the word party, is like fun and lighthearted and people like chatting and getting along, this was not that kind of party. What I remember is it was this house that was not even, it wasn't even done. Like the house wasn't finished. Um, it looked like a house that was under construction, but they were actually just living there. But like the walls were just the like the particle board. You know, they didn't even have like drywall on them. Same with the floors. And I remember, I don't know why this is what stands out to me, but rather than having, like decorations on the walls, they had just hammered a bunch of saw blades into the walls and that was their decor. And I remember there was this projector that they had projecting, I'm gonna say movies onto like one wall, but it wasn't movies, it was actually just pornography. That's what it was. Um, and there were all kinds of other things happening, like either you know what kind of situation I'm talking about, and I don't have to explain all the details to you, or you don't, and that's a good thing. And I don't want to be the one who tells you what kind of things go on at these places. So just accept my summary that this was a bad situation. And I don't even remember who I was with or why I was there, but these were very much people on like the bottom rung of like really on the outside looking in at society. And even they didn't like me. And I just remember this really distinctive moment of like, even these people are too good for me. Like, where do I belong? I am lower than the lowest of the low. And I want to give a disclaimer here. This is not how I see people. This is not like, I am not judging people and saying like, oh, you guys are the low. Like, this is how society views these people. I don't actually believe any person can be more important or more valuable than any other person. But I know that's not necessarily how this world that we're all kind of shoved into looks at things. So I'm just using that terminology so you know what I'm talking about. But even this group of people, like, just did not have any interest in me. And this was like my last shot at this point. So this was right before the year when I essentially dropped out of school and said, screw it, I'm pretty much done with life. I'm just gonna like do the bare minimum to exist until something happens. I don't know. And essentially my takeaway from this party was like, am I the worst person on earth? Because I have tried everything. I have looked for my place and for my people in every like dark alley of this world, and I have come up empty. So where do I go from here? The next few years is a whole nother story for another video. But the summary of what happened to me during this time is that I was misapplying the transitive property to my life. And if you don't know what that means, the transitive property essentially states like if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A must be greater than C. And so I was like, I didn't know that. I wasn't like actually thinking, oh, I'm going to do the transitive property to try to find my people. But it was like, if I'm not good enough for these people, I must have to like try a group of people who are like considered less desirable by the world and just keep going down and down and down that ladder until I find where I belong. But there are many things that the transitive property does not work for. To give you an example of this, it does not work in sports. This is kind of a cheesy metaphor, but bear with me. So if team A beats team B and team B beats team C, you would probably think team A is going to beat team C, right? Because they beat the team that beat them. But if you follow sports at all, you know that's actually not how it plays out sometimes because it's not as simple as just looking at the objective quality of the team. There are other factors that play into that matchup, like style or motivation, like what mood were the players in on any given day. And there's all kinds of times in sports where things don't play out the way you think they would on paper, and that's kind of what makes them fun and exciting. Life is the same way. And just because some certain group of people, whether it's a group of people socially or like a job or an academic program, just because some group or some person or some organization deems you like undesirable or unacceptable to them, that doesn't automatically mean that you should move what you would consider to be down on that particular totem pole. That is the mistake. That is the mistake I made for 10 years that almost broke me. Is I kept going down. And for some reason, it never occurred to me that maybe this life I'm trying to live and this person I'm trying to be is the complete opposite direction of where I'm supposed to go. And the short version of the next 10 years of my life is I started trying the opposite. I started actually challenging myself to be more than who I thought I was, to take on challenges that were beyond what I thought I was capable of. And if I don't feel like I fit somewhere, to try to move up instead of trying to move down. And at least for me, that is when I still don't always necessarily feel like I belong in a lot of places or with a lot of people, but I do feel so much more comfortable in my own life than what I did when I was trying to fit in with those other lifestyles. And that, I think, is ultimately what we are all looking for. It's great if you can get understanding and acceptance from other people, but at least in my experience, it's a really hard thing to get, especially if you're, and I'm sorry if this makes me sound like an edgy teenager, but like not the world's most blueprinty type person. Like I still kind of have that. I've got a lot of different traits that I don't think always go together in like one single person. And I don't know that I have like a group where I that I can find and feel comfortable, but feel comfortable in my own life. And when I was trying to find the bottom, when I was trying to find like where is this group of people who deemed me good enough, I was living in a way that I was not comfortable with. I was making choices and doing things that were so far removed from the actual values that I held that I was disgusted with myself. And it made me feel worse and worse and worse, which probably is part of why no one wanted to be around me. Because when you hate every single thing about yourself, I think people can kind of pick up on that. It doesn't necessarily make you the most fun or most desirable person to be around, but I went the wrong way. I spent 10 years going the wrong way. It seems so obvious now, but what I was missing, the truth that I was missing, is that I kept assuming that if I didn't fit in, didn't belong, didn't succeed, it meant that I was less than that life. It meant that I was less valuable, less capable, less functional, and I was worth less. And I kept trying to make my lifestyle, my functioning, my peer group match this gradually declining sense of self. And it never worked. Not once. It never occurred to me. What if you try to go in the other direction? What if you tried to actually find the place you belong in life in the opposite direction of what has not worked for you for a decade? And it was a very, very slow, arduous process to get there. But as I started to do that, as I started to actually expect more of myself, treat myself like a valuable person, even though I did not feel like one at all, that is when things started to finally turn around for me. Because I realized, I think I learned this term when I was like 30. So I wasn't actually like in my head at age 20 being like, oh, I've misused the transitive property and ruined my life. This is, hindsight from an almost 41-year-old at this point. But if you can't find your place, no matter how low you go, maybe stop going lower. Try going the opposite direction. Because if there's one thing I've learned from this screwed up life of mine, it's that the transitive property doesn't work on people.